Salut tout le monde! Welcome everyone to the Global Ministerial Panel, and I am very excited to be introducing and sharing the stage, the virtual stage, if you will, with four amazing women. And we're going to dive into the stories and just what they're doing to impact the world on a international level. But before that, you probably want to know who's actually talking on the mic right now. And so my name is Ty Roxon, and if you attended the earlier panel about gender equality and men championing women, you probably heard that I am a diversity and inclusion consultant, and I run that basically on an international level, and I work with companies to bridge cultural divides. But my story with foreign affairs and global ministry started with my dad. My dad was a diplomat, and as a result, we moved around a lot. As a Nigerian, we moved to 5 countries and 4 continents, and one of those countries is actually Sweden, Ambassador Markovich. And so Sweden, Vietnam, Burkina Faso, the United States, and Nigeria. And that afforded me the perspective of seeing the world through multiple lenses. And so I'm really excited to be sharing the stage with these amazing women. So we have Ambassador Annika Markovich. We have Minister Nina, and I'm sorry if I get this wrong, Angelovska?
That's right.
Angelovska.
You did it well.
Yeah, yes. We have Ambassador Tocha Sachka. Sachka.
Okay. Close enough.
Close enough. We have Vera Pinto Gomes. And of course, we have this random guy hosting the show. So what I'm going to do to have you all introduce yourself to the audience is basically walk us down the timeline of your career and how you got to where you got to and what the pivotal moments were. I'm going to start off with you, Ambassador Annika Markovich, then I'm going to go clockwise. So Nina, then Ambassador Teocha, and then Vera. So the floor is yours, Ambassador Markovich.
Thank you. And I think you already basically told my story. I've also been, a diplomat for the Swedish Foreign Service for many, many years, too many to count. And I've been moving across the world. I've lived in many different continents. I lived in New York. I lived in Brasilia. I lived in Manila. I lived in Paris. And currently I'm the Swedish ambassador to the Netherlands. So I live in The Hague, a beautiful, beautiful city. Not too far from my home country, Sweden, which is also nice. So I'm back in Europe.
You're back in Europe. You're back in Europe. Okay. Well, Ms. Nina.
Thank you. Well, I think my career is very diverse, beginning 10 years ago as a female entrepreneur, launching the first e-commerce group buying business in North Macedonia. When I graduated and won at the most innovative business plan, that's how I dived into the business world. After 10 years of experience in tech, e-commerce, entrepreneurship, traveling a lot and doing lots of things apart and running the business, now I'm here in the Ministry of Finance as a part of the government. And this shift and change happened less than a year ago when I was invited by the Prime Minister to take this position. I believe that this is the first time that we have somebody from the private sector or entrepreneur taking this position, and is the first women Minister of Finance actually since the establishment of our country. So it's an interesting career. Challenges are always there. I've had them previously in the business life, but this is a totally different dimension and world, which we will speak about during this session, I guess.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to diving into that, and congrats on the position. I can see how you jumped at that opportunity, and I'm glad that you're the one that's leading that. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the story. Ambassador Teocha.
Hello, I'm very honored to be in this amazing panel with amazing women and moderator, and very, very able moderator. It's always a pleasure to be among members of my tribe, among members that believe in gender equality, that believe in themselves and push world to be the better place. I am engineer by profession. And during my career, there were different different paths. First as engineer, as working with machines in maintenance, then entering to software development, making the software for a very big company of textile, then entering to private sector, becoming owner of radio communication company, then entering to politics, participating in many elections. And lately, as Minister Angelovska said, I have been asked by Prime Minister to go to New York and to represent Kosovo as a head of a mission. So yeah, it was really interesting, multiple paths, but all together, I think they made me strong. And in all those paths, I was the strong supporter of women empowerment, especially of economic empowerment, since I believe that economic empowerment, political empowerment, cause women to be the very active and the voice, strong voice that need to be in institutions.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that Ambassador Satya and Minister Angelovska, both of you were appointed. And so sometimes anyone listening, you can think about, you can be in a different field, but if you are doing something that's impactful, your position can lead to an appointed position in the ministry. So that's another way to get there. Vera, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I feel honored to be with these amazing women with such a story and breaking barriers. So it's quite interesting to see, and an honor for me to be among them. So I come from Portugal, a small country in South Europe, and my background is actually international relations. So I did all my studies in political science and international relations, and usually people think this as you're going for a diplomatic career. But in fact, between I did my studies until I start working in space, it took around 10 years. And in that process, I worked with in public service in private companies, and I worked in fields like migration, refugees, justice. But space was always my passion since I was a teenager. And I remember one day seeing the news at the canteen of the university and thinking that I will write my master thesis about space exploration and about space policy. So it took me 10 years, but finally I applied for a job at the European Commission. So the European Commission has its own EU space program. And I ended up in... I got selected for one position that it was actually a technical unit. It is full of engineers only because it's responsible for all the technical management of the space programs. And I was the only non-technical person among there. And it was an interesting experience. So I'm working, now I'm on a different team, but I'm working in space already for almost 7 years. And I'm learning a lot. And not being the technical person around, it was also very interesting because I brought a different perspective to the team. And so I made good friends and good work colleagues, and we managed to start changing also some things inside. So early this year, there was some changes at the European Commission, end of last year, beginning this year. So there was a reorganization, and now I continue to work in space, but now we are a specific structure, Director General inside the European Commission working in space. And I moved to another type of work that is related to space benefits and to bring space benefits to all. And one part of my role is being also the equality coordinator for space in defense at our Director General, and to promote space towards as an enabler for equality and inclusion.
Let's stay there, because you did say that you are now with the European Commission, I guess. But the thing that I'm interested in is something that I've heard you say in an interview, and you've said that there are societal benefits that space has for equality and inclusion. And since today's topic is on gender equality, could you expand on that? What are these societal benefits that come with space?
So people are using space data and services on their daily lives, and they are not aware of it. So this panel now is happening thanks to space technology. And you would not think about that would even be possible, but it is. There is space behind this. So you use space on your phone, on your car. Space has an impact on the food that reaches your table, even on your clothes, your healthcare. So it's really everywhere. And so, for example, when we speak about sustainable development goals, it is a conversation that must include space. In the importance of the role, for example, of Earth observation and satellite navigation in supporting the achievement of the development goals is even recognized by the United Nations. And the potential of space in supporting this is really much wider than just Earth observation and geolocation. And they are key, for example, the space data and services are key to understand things like climate change or disaster management cycle. And this is only a few examples of more broader applications of space. When you look at the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals, space directly contributes for the achievement of at least 40% of the targets. So if you want to go beyond and really keep the 2030 milestone, you need to include space on the discussion, and you need to make sure that the benefits reach all. So when specifically on space applications addressing equality and inclusion, there are already solutions that help on the daily needs of the most vulnerable groups. So we know that space data and services help promote equality and inclusion because we already saw business ideas and business products and innovative solutions that use the European Union space program, Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, GovSatcom, etc., as enablers of these solutions. So, for example, a concrete example of space-enabled solutions, there's some applications that are available and that allow impaired vision people to do outdoor sports, or even to give them autonomy to go from point A to point B with no other assistance. So the application really guides them, and this uses satellite navigation to help them go through the sidewalk and to go, for example, to the supermarket, to leave their house and go to the supermarket.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
Also, you have, for example, crowdsourced solutions that allow people using wheelchairs to know the optimal route inside the cities. And with this collective data, it helps urban planning to be more inclusive when other public authorities are working on how to improve a road or how to build a new facility and so on. So you can use this data also for urban planning, and this comes by using satellite-enabled solutions.
Oh.
Also, sorry, I get very excited, but I just need to raise one specific example that is related with victims of violence. There are solutions that can help victims ask for help or to protect them from aggressors and so on. So when you speak now, for example, in confinement, this can be, it will not solve the problem, but it can help.
And then I love that you brought that up, because a lot of the technology that you're saying that we use are, you're talking about satellite technology, and you're also talking about technology that allows people to have different abilities to actually be part of the society, right? A lot of times, maybe years previously, we didn't have those opportunities to have that. I also like that you talked about the sustainable, the development goals. And I know that's something that you're passionate about, Ambassador Markovic, because you once said that investing in gender equality and women empowerment is crucial for peace, justice, and sustainable development, as well as the overall economy.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I am convinced that gender equality is really to the benefit of the whole society. And I use this term benefit on purpose, because gender equality is not only right, it's also the smart thing to do. And increasing gender equality has positive effects on economic growth, on health, on education, on welfare, on so many areas and so many parts of the society that it's definitely worth investing in. And I remember when I was 25 and I joined the Swedish Foreign Service, and I thought, in Sweden, we are equal, and there will never be any problem because I'm a woman or because there are gender differences. But I was so wrong. I mean, I can tell you so many examples that gender equality is not just an objective that you work to attain. It's really a process, and you need to continue to work on gender equality and make sure that it's in every part of the society. And once you stop, you move backwards. So it's a constant process. And I started working on gender equality when Beijing, the first women's conference, just had happened in '95. So it's 25 years ago. And I'm really passionate about gender equality. I think it's the right thing to do for many reasons. And you asked me about peace, and there I think it's even more important to make sure that we include women in peace negotiations. There are so many examples when peace agreements have been drawn up around the table with just men, and then the peace agreement doesn't last, because you need to have all the different perspectives into a peace agreement, and you need to have the women around the peace negotiation table from the very start. And only then can you make sure that this is a sustainable peace agreement that you achieve. So because of this, my government actually launched an initiative of a network of women peace negotiators around the world. And we are, first of all, offering the service of the Swedish female peace negotiators that we have. But we also, when we support initiatives and peace negotiations, we always ask the question, where are the women? And I think that is the question you need to continue to ask. Where are the women in the boards? Where are the women in the ambassador groups? Where are the women in the panels? Where are the women? Everywhere. You need to continue to ask that question, because it's only when we have the different perspectives that we can really make a change. And a sustainable change.
I agree. And I'm going to go straight to you, Minister Angelovska, because Northern Macedonia is a recent formation, or you had to change your name recently, I believe. And I believe that there were probably some peace negotiations or some negotiations involved in some concessions on either side. So could you educate us on how Northern Macedonia came to be, especially after listening to what Ambassador Markovic said? Because I know that there were women involved in making that a reality.
Yes, we recently changed our name. You're right, to North Macedonia. It has been a long-standing dispute with our neighbor Greece. After long negotiations, I was not part of the government during this process, but the Prespa agreement was signed in 2018, and this solved the issue that we had with our neighbors. So it's maybe good to focus on the overcome issues and to share the great news that we officially got the accession talks with the EU to open negotiations for becoming an EU member. So this was one of the conditions to solve this issue that we had for a very, very long time. So this is one very positive thing during this pandemic and this crisis. And the other positive thing is that in March we became a NATO member. So after, of course, this is after, because your question was about negotiations, after successful negotiations, which of course now we're discussing about women. Ambassador Markovic mentioned the importance of involving women in peace and in each processes. I completely could not agree more with that. There is a saying that says that women take better care. So I think that taking care of relations, taking care of people is something that is very important during these processes, because at the end of the day, it all comes up to building relations with countries, with people, among each other, with employees. And I believe that this is something that we women are good at. And I think we should appreciate that and recognize it and have more women everywhere. But it's not that women are only better or not better, but biology says that in certain things, like emotions and taking care, women are better. But there is something that Ambassador also that I would like to piggy up on that as well. She mentioned that women should be everywhere, and where are women in terms of leading roles, in terms of bigger positions. And I think that what is interesting to note here is that there was one, I was writing on Forbes an article, like I think a year ago, which the title said, be competent like a woman and confident and ambitious like a man. This is actually because this study from Harvard showed that women are even better in taking charge in terms of evaluating women in leadership skills comparing to men. And this is actually breaking the stereotype that women can take better care and men take charge. So I think that maybe we should discuss a bit more about there are certain barriers, but we should definitely encourage women to aim higher, to be more ambitious and to be more confident, because I believe that the sky is the limit for everybody, and it should be the case for every woman. So I believe that this is something that should be addressed so that we remove this leadership ambitious gap between men and women, and that is, I think, something that is important for every woman on this planet to be aware of her competencies and confidence, and to aim higher, so that we get to the point where the ambassador was saying that we should have women everywhere on the table, on negotiations, in policy making, in leading positions, in space, like Vera was talking and mentioning. And I think that this is something that we should give some attention to.
Yeah, women on Earth, women outside of Earth, for sure. I can see you, Ambassador Teocha. You're like, I have something to say, and I know that you firmly believe that institutions, municipalities, governments, parliaments, they're all products of political parties. So feel free, if you had anything to add to what's been said, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But I'm also curious to hear why you believe political parties play a big role in shaping the whole gender equality equation.
In this panel, I feel so happy. I'm hearing my words and words of my friends from your mouth, and even the sentences are so same. And I'm so happy that all over the world we are building the alliance, or the coalition, and the success of every woman, wherever they are, is a success for all others. It's a path to follow and to refer to. I agree very much with Ambassador Markovits that although Sweden, I've heard from Swedish parliamentarians that also, we also believe that Sweden is the top of gender equality. They do not have to do anything, that's there for granted, but they said that there is nothing granted, and if you don't work to keep that, it's like swimming. If you don't swim, you go down. And that happened also in Kosovo after very hard work to achieve quota for parliament, for municipalities, to put quota in police, to put quota in judiciary and other places. We thought that it's okay, nobody can remove that quota of 30%. And suddenly some expert from European Union came and talked to men from political parties and said that quota is against human rights. And guess what? Every political man from political parties were saying even the same sentence. We have to remove, Europe says that quota is against human rights, and we need really to get together women from all political parties to set aside all differences and get together and said, if you dare to touch 30%, we will demand 50%, and we will demand it everywhere. So for the time being, that was settled, but our fight continued. And I have to mention, I cannot mention this also. It was a fight about women ambassadors. When I was still a member of parliament, we received a list of proposed ambassadors. And guess what? List was 100% men. And then we women got together and said, we made a conference for media. We threatened that we will not allow that list to pass. And we made it. We made it. Minister apologized. And from that time, many women became ambassadors. I didn't know the time that I will become ambassador also. But who knows, when you work well, it returns. About peace and negotiation, I'm also co-founder of Regional Women Lobby for Peace and Security. We had war in 1999 in Kosovo. We had negotiations. We will still have another round of negotiation for a normalization of relations with Serbia. And our continuous work to have women in table of peace negotiation is ongoing fight. Men never gave up. And we cannot expect them to say, oh, come on, here is a table for you. But we really need to fight hard to get our place in a table. Because without women, as my dear friends now, new friends, said, without women, the solution is not complete.
That,
it's like working with one hand. You need both hands to have a grip, to have the maximum. And I strongly believe that one of big portion of work need to be concentrated in political parties. Political parties are those who propose candidates for members of parliament. Political parties are those who propose members for ministers, for highest positions in institutions and other. And if in political party, the presidency is 100% men or have one woman or two, then guess what? There will not be ministers, there will not be president of parliament or chairing the parliamentary committees and other. At the beginning, after the war, in Kosovo, when we put the quota, the common question was, do you believe that quota is about quantity against quality? And we were talking about 30% only. And my answer was a question. Do you think that 70% of men is quality? No, they are not.
I just dropped my water bottle because of that.
Today, nobody is anymore asking about quality or quantity. I think that quota created that critical mass of women to be seen in parliament, to be seen in institutions, and to be seen not talking only about education, about childcare and other, but to see women also talking about diplomacy, about security, about defense, about energy, about, we don't talk about space yet in Kosovo. I hope we will come to that. And yeah, we have to continue. And I cannot end without congratulating our dear neighbor, North Macedonia, for becoming member of NATO. I hope we will join you soon. And about the accession, every success of North Macedonia is success for us, is happiness, is feeling more secure and more developed with the neighbors like you.
I would love to actually hear both of you talk about that, and then I want to hear Vera's thoughts on the quota. But the reason, why do you feel like Kosovo's success and Northern Macedonia's success are very important? Because I don't know that many people in the audience know the history of the two countries and how they came to be, and why countries like both of yours need to succeed to show the world that there is possibility for peace after conflict. Anyone? But I'm just curious because I can see the kinship between you two, and I understand that. But sometimes when I have conversations, I don't think people understand the importance of seeing success in both of your countries.
I think that our countries were the last countries that came from the dissolution of Yugoslavia and from the very difficult recent past that we had. It was the last war in Europe, and I think that despite that hardship, being refugee and being Kosovo ended up with almost 20,000 women who were sexually abused, around 40,000 killed, another destroyed and burned. And I'm happy that Macedonia didn't pass that path as we did. But I think that in middle of all this hardship, women, especially in Kosovo, I believe other places also, came stronger after the war. The civil society in Kosovo, women's civil society, was very strong after the war. We saw the very important part that we can take, because everything was starting from the scratch, working in a new and modern constitution, working in new laws. It's easier to start the new constitution and the new legislation than to amend the constitution another. And in that matter, we had also a strong support of international community who came immediately after the war. And we had really strong support from them also to fight men from our parties. And yeah.
Interesting. All right, I'd love to get your thoughts, Nina, and then I'll pass it over to you, Vera, on some other questions.
Yeah, I'll just briefly compare to the real life example, because the ambassador already shared a bit of a history. I think it's very important to have good relations with all our neighbors. Take, for instance, if you live in a building and you have neighbors who you don't, with whom you don't have a good relationship, your life would not be as good as if you had good relationships with all of your neighbors. So it's basically, I think that each challenge and each resolution of any dispute, regardless if it's conflict, if it's a certain disagreement, makes us stronger. There is a saying about compromise, that there are two parties that are at the end not equally happy, but I like to think that we are making compromises in our daily lives all the time. And it's about perception, I think. So I think that it's definitely very important to have good relationships with the neighbors in our real lives, with the neighbors as countries, because it's part of our lives. It affects our development, it affects our attitude, it affects our relationships with other people, countries. So I am happy that we have good relations with all our neighbors now, that there are lots of things that are overcome. So we are looking forward to progressing to our very ambitious agenda that we had. Even now, maybe make it move faster after this pandemic and crisis. Yes,
for sure.
Because we believe definitely that each crisis is a threat to our countries, to our nations, to the lives, to the well-being, but at the same time, it represents an opportunity. So I think that this is the very, very good opportunity for women, for female entrepreneurs, for development of technologies faster than ever. And I believe that all of us here on this talk would agree, and all of our countries would be able to accelerate and leapfrog and make some things right and put them on a fast forward mode that we were not able to do it so before.
I'm learning a lot about negotiations from you, Minister Angelovska. You've got to be able to see things from different perspectives and look at the big picture. Vera, you've heard all this. You studied international relations. You have a passion for space and educating people on space. You also love healthcare. And I'm just curious, anything comes to mind? Any thought as you're listening to these amazing women talk about how they're trying to bridge divides and work in quotas and things like that?
A few things actually come to my mind. I would like to pick up on the last the last part that the minister just mentioned, that each crisis is a challenge, of course, but it also represents an opportunity. And one of the things that I'm defending in the last months, so because of exactly the current situation we are facing, is that we don't need, you speak a lot about, we hear a lot about recovering from this crisis. And I think we don't need to recover, we need to rebuild. Because this is actually an opportunity to rebuild for a more sustainable and inclusive society. And in Europe, the opportunities are there. For the first time ever, the European Commission has a woman, a female, as a president. This never happened. And you can see already, even in the priorities that were established, that some things start to change. And one of them is that for the first time, it is one of the top 5 priorities of the Commission is equality. So equality in all its senses, mainstream in all our policies, internally on our organization, but also on the policies that we produce and we put into place towards all Europe. And the Commission took office in November 2019, and beginning March this year, it was already published the EU Gender Strategy 2020-2025 that sets a number of objectives and policy goals towards a more gender equal Europe. And this covers equal opportunities to drive and to choose whatever people want to become. It covers also reducing the gender gap, the gender pay gap. It follows the binding paid transparency measures. This will be a work that me and other colleagues of mine in the European Commission, we will all work towards to achieve equal participation among all sectors of the economy in Europe. Yeah. So this is quite ambitious. And it also means that a lot of work will need to be done, but it's a start in changing and a start in one step closer to achieve true equality.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, I like that. Recognizing the opportunity in crisis and focusing on redesigning. Ambassador Markovic, you hear this, and I know you represent The Hague, but one of the things even Ambassador Teocha brought up is Sweden, at least in the Western world, has been brought up as this paragon of gender equality. I remember I was given a presentation on masculinity, and I saw a picture on the website of a man carrying a baby, and they're like, this is how you do it. And so, given your work, what do you feel like is necessary to implement on a short-term basis and a long-term basis to, I guess, attain gender balance on the management level?
So, well, how long do we have?
As long as we got 22 more minutes.
What I really want to emphasize is the need to make, to empower women economically, to make sure that they have full access to education, full access to the labor market so that they can earn their own money. And then one real crucial point is to have individual taxation. This was a reform that we did early on, and that has really made a big difference, because if you are taxed as a family, very often you as a second earner, that is very often the woman, is punished in a family taxation system. So with individual taxation, you are really empowering the woman in the family, and she can then be on the labor market. You provide affordable childcare so that she can also work instead of staying at home and taking care of the kids. And then, you have the opportunity for that woman to also be economically independent. And I think that is really the crucial reforms you need to put in place to ensure that you have a gender equal society. But I wanted to say a few words about education too, because we talked a lot about education, and especially STEM, the technical education. And there I looked at the numbers, and I saw that the portion of female ICT graduates in Europe actually decreased from 15% in 2011 to 13% in 2018. So there, I really think it's important with people like Vera to be role models in a very male-dominated area like space, because I think that young women need role models, and we can all be role models. I think we really need to think about how we can show leadership to also young women and young men, to allow the space for young women to take that space and to become economically independent. So it all comes together, and we all have to work in showing leadership and making sure that this will happen.
Yeah, I love that, and I know this is something that Ambassador Teocha also believes in, that economic empowerment is tied to gender empowerment. So I love hearing that juxtaposition there. I want to touch on a very touchy subject, which is sexual abuse, gender-based violence, and how that has been tackled across institutions. And I would love to hear everyone's opinion on this. And I'm going to stay with you, Ambassador Markovic, because I know this is something that you have supported vocally, openly. You've said in the instituted programs. Why is it so important that we don't fall asleep on this particular issue?
Well, I work here in The Hague as Sweden's representative to the International Criminal Court. And there you have a number of court cases with really severe atrocities, including gender and sexual-based violence. And you just need to hear the stories of the survivors to understand why you need to work on this, and you can never let go, because the stories are horrible, really horrible, and how you can use sexual and gender-based violence in conflict. It's really something that has to be dealt with and being brought up in all the different court cases where it has been used. Yeah. And then on a national level, my government has a strategy for preventing and combating violence against women in Sweden, because also in a country like Sweden, it exists, of course, it exists in every country. And during the time now, with the corona crisis and COVID-19, we have increased the budget for this work, so that there are more opportunities for individuals that are at risk or already in difficult situations to get support from the government. Yeah. Because I think that you need to provide that support, especially when you have people now in quarantine, in confinement, maybe in abusive families. It's even more important that you reach out and you have this opportunity to help, and that the budget should not be a constraint. So that's why the government has put more money available for these actions, both in Sweden, but also in our development cooperation programs with other countries.
Key word I heard there is budget should not be a constraint. Ambassador Teocha.
Yes.
Something that you also talk about a lot. What do you agree? What are your thoughts?
I agree 100% that gender violence is something that need to be tackled multidimensionally. Unfortunately, even the judges and police and other consider gender violence as family matter. So why should I care? And send to the woman back to the abusive family that ended up not only by physical abuse, but many times by death and by killing of that woman. That's why institutions need to work multidimensionally in legislation, putting the good legislation, in implementation of legislation, in training the judges, the police, to see that not as a family matter, but as a matter that really needs strong response. And not only gender violence, during that COVID also put that in a surface as an issue. In Kosovo case, it was another sexual violence. It was a sexual violence during the war. And that sexual violence usually goes with stigma. Usually the victims are those who everybody put the finger and blame them of being violated. I worked together with many women parliamentarians very hard. I remember at the beginning when we were talking about sexual violence during the war, There were members of parliament, not only men, but women also, who denied that it existed. They said, shut up, it never existed. What are you talking about? It needed a lot of effort, a lot of work to open that issue, to open that taboo issue. Today, I'm very proud to say that we passed the legislation, amended the law, and put those survivors as a victims of the war. I'm very happy that after such a long time and such a long multidimensional, multi-institutional work, we achieved to get the budget, to get the commission and budget for those survivors.
Yeah.
And it is not over. It's not finished. We need to work, to continue to work with those women, not only to say that you are not those who are to blame, you are the victims, but not only to stop on that, but also to work in their psychosocial recovery and in economic empowerment. And I'm very happy that we worked together in different programs with different ministries, with different embassies. Swedish embassy also was very strong supporter to provide those women with skills, with other things, to start small business, some jewelry making, donating a cow or beehive, or skills to start giving the grants and telling them that they are a part of society. They need to be included, they need to be helped, because most of them, despite being sexually abused during the war, they were abused by their families, by society, by blaming them and stigmatizing them. So it's long work, and not only as parliamentarian, but also as a head of mission in New York. I worked a lot with SRSG on sexual violence during the conflict. I organized several conferences and gave the speeches in Harvard, in Ohio, in many other universities to tell about this issue, to engage, especially our diaspora, to fundraise for businesses, to help those women to economically be empowered and start to feel a member of society and not blamed ones.
I'm so glad that you two. Can you hear me? Is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad that you too, Ambassador Teoca and Ambassador Markovic brought up that need for budget and constant vigilance, because there is a stigma, right? And I know, Vera, I was listening to your amazing TEDx talk, and if you haven't listened to it, make sure you check it out, where Vera was just so beautifully brave about, some of the invisible disabilities that we don't talk about. But I see a parallel with that, Vera, from what I'm hearing, where when we have a stigmatized world, we actually don't protect the people that have the stigma placed on them. So when you hear our lovely ambassadors here talk, what are your thoughts, and how do you feel like we can move past that stigma and create a more safe space for these type of conversations and stigmas to be brought down?
First of all, I think it's overwhelming what Ambassador Teoca just shared. And it's impressive how in 21st century, there are still people denying that these things exist. And even in Europe and other countries that are not conflict zones, the levels of violence against women are so high, and people still pretend that they don't exist. And this is quite overwhelming. But it touches also something that it was mentioned about education and role models, and the fact of creating the safe spaces. And I think, and in my personal opinion, is really the absence of literacy and the absence of information publicly available with no taboo speaking about these subjects that makes people create their imaginary narratives. We tend to measure the world by what we see and around us. And so if we don't see invisible disabilities, or if we don't see violence, we believe that it doesn't exist. And also, people fear what they don't know. And what they don't understand. And so they start building this perception about the world that is full of bias. And don't get me wrong, we all have unconscious bias, but it's very important that we are aware of them and which bias we have, so that we can change a bit our perception around the world. And so for me, creating safe spaces, it means creating safe spaces to actually everyone, to any person, depending on their gender, their sexual orientation, their ethnic origin, their religion. It needs to be safe to everyone. And this passes a lot by raising awareness, by education, by even promoting soft skills like compassion and empathy, to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. Even if I didn't live or experience the situation itself, I still need to be able and available to hear what the story of the other person, without judging it or saying you are exaggerating or you're lying. If the person is telling it, it's because it happened. And so just because I don't see it on my daily life and on my reality, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
And everything that is invisible, it's among us. We just don't see it with our eyes.
That's true. That's true. And that's often what I say on this. And I think a lot of inclusion and a lot of belonging has to do with connecting the visible to the invisible. And too many of us think that when we see the visible, that's it, right? We don't understand that there are multiple things going there. And I want to close with Minister Angelovska. First on the topic of this, and I also want to give you a chance to really, close with your how you got started, with e-commerce and tech, where that's what built you, and you got to see some things there that were not equal. And so, please, your thoughts on, sexual-based violence, the stigmas, and you, especially now that you're in a government position, and then maybe we can go backwards to the tech and e-commerce and how that can help break down these barriers.
Thank you. I think that I completely agree, and the other speakers already shared regarding the stigma, regarding the violence, regarding there should be no prejudice. We should take joint efforts and steps to overcome this. Countries are fighting on their own. There is regulation, but there is again other invisible things that we should all work on. So I would, now that you're mentioning in the gender issue and being in this position, I've been asked many times previously when I was in the private sector and in the NGO world, I've been asked many times if I felt prejudice or if I felt discrimination or for being woman or for being young. And my answer was always very optimistic and very positive, that I was working very hard with dedication and passion, and I didn't even get the time to think about it. I was just always thinking that I can beat others with knowledge and with, as Vera mentioned, the greatest fear is of unknowing something. So it was always the case of grab more knowledge and fight with that. But I have to say now my answer is very different now that I'm in this position. I think there is a totally different dimension of discrimination and prejudice in politics. Being, again, there is this adjective young, but there is also the adjective of being the first woman to take this position is definitely non-comparable. The challenges, the speed, the words, the media, everything that was happening since I was appointed was just, I would say, something that I haven't ever felt, and I didn't even thought that it's like this. But I'm again trying to look optimistic, because if you don't feel it, if you don't have the emotion, you would not fight as hard as if I would previously for the gender balance and equality. So I definitely think that we should, there is the governments, the countries, there are initiatives like the SDG goals and all these efforts that are being put into building a more equal world in equal access, equal opportunities. It was already mentioned, skills, education in all sorts of areas. But if I'm trying to end on a positive note, there are two things that I would like now again to compare. One is that this was a challenge when I came to this position, but when this pandemic has hit, now it's always about comparing to what? A challenge comparing to what? So now this challenge that this crisis has brought is non-comparable to the previous challenges that I was facing. It's just about trying to do the impossible in terms of time, in terms of budget execution, financing the needs of our country in terms of fiscal measures, operational things, managing people, trying to keep from dusk till dawn motivated and go again and again each day. But that's one thing, that now the challenge is totally different to the previous. But on the other hand, it's also the opportunity is a bit different. Yeah. So what your question was, to end with a bit of the tech and my journey and my experience, I would say that I don't think that there will ever be an opportunity like this for technology and for women like it is today during this pandemic and COVID crisis. It's simply because it's not a choice. It's not if we choose to work on the traditional way or the digital way. It just, there isn't any choice. Everybody has to adapt. And I like to think that this pandemic will soon, rather sooner or later, one day it will end. And once this ends, it will be up on us how better, smarter, stronger, how more digitally educated our nations will be. And it will depend on us, on the actions we take now, on how fastly we adapt to the situation. Because definitely people will have new skills, there will be new business models, and technology will definitely be in the cell across every industry and every country of the world. So I would like to leave each of the participants on this call with a message that to be smart, to use this opportunity wisely, especially for female entrepreneurs and technology. It's a magical and beautiful combination. Technology is beautiful, and when you add women to it, it's just amazing, and the timing is right. And let's use it smartly so that we come up stronger out of this and more equal after this crisis ends.
Well, I mean, Minister Angelovska, you did that so well that we have 2 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to acknowledge and I say that's what I hope we all get towards, the idea of working and understanding and recognizing opportunity. But I want to give everybody 30 seconds max to just say something that you want to give the audience with, because Minister Angelovski did it so well. So just 30 seconds max, and then we have to wrap. So I'm going to start with you, Vera.
I would just like to say that every one of us can be a driver for change. And here during this panel, we had examples of powerful women. Powerful not in the sense that they have power, but power in the sense of drivers they are to bring change. But any of us in our daily life, we can bring change. And keep in mind that diseases do not discriminate. It's the human behavior, it's the choices that we do and the decisions we make that bring discrimination. So think wisely.
Love it. Love that. Ambassador Markovic.
So I want to emphasize the role of men. I think that men has such an important role to promote gender equality. And you are the one who need to start asking, where are the women? Because it's only with all of us working for gender equality that we are going to achieve it.
Ambassador Tilcha, bring it home.
That was really great. I think that men are definitely very powerful part of gender equality, but I would like also to concentrate in coalition between women and bringing young girls and boys and mentoring them and educating them that gender equality is something good for all, not only for women, but for men also, for society, for institution, for country, for whole world.
Well, thank you all amazing women. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Anyone thinking about international relations, you can see that it involves many skill sets: negotiation, thinking big picture, ability to understand another perspective, even if you don't agree. And so I hope that you all have taken this with a grain of salt and you said to yourself, I'm going to make the world a better place and recognize the opportunity. Thank you all for participating, and I hope to connect with you all virtually. Till next time, be great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.